So I want to talk about a function of, there's actually a gland that sits right above the kidneys, right? And we're going to call it, since it's above the kidneys, we're going to call it suprarenal gland. Supra means above, renal means kidney, so it's a gland above the kidneys. Some of you may have heard of this as ad also means above, right? Adrenal, so it's all suprarenal is also called the adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland has, just like the kidneys, it's got an outer portion right over here called the cortex and an inner portion called the medulla. Now this is called the adrenal cortex on the outside, and this is called the adrenal medulla. Do not get this confused with the renal cortex and the renal medulla, because that's talking about the actual kidney. I'm just talking about this gland that's in blue right above the kidney. So that's called the adrenal cortex, not the renal cortex. They are two different parts, right? And the adrenal cortex it secretes a hormone called aldosterone. And aldosterone happens to be a steroid hormone. And you may have learned that aldosterone actually increases blood pressure. And we're going to talk about how does that actually work. Well, let's go back down to our nephron. Aldosterone actually binds onto a receptor. It's a mineralocorticoid receptor, right? It's a mineral. Corticoid meaning it's from the cortex, in this case, adrenal cortex, so it's a corticoid. It binds onto the receptor of the DCT. And what happens here is, let's say you have to increase your blood pressure, right? Well, aldosterone actually transcribes these sodium pumps. And the sodium gets pumped in. And where do you think it gets pumped in from? Well, we have two environments, right? Remember, we have the kidneys. Either you have the nephron or the bloodstream. It's only got to go from one environment to the other. So it's going to pump sodium from the distal tubule, the distal convoluted tubule, and it's going to go right into the bloodstream right over here. And I can't, my marker's not that small. There we go. So what's going to happen here? How does that actually increase blood pressure? Well, one of the properties of sodium is that sodium is an osmotically active particle. So if sodium goes into the bloodstream, water will naturally follow it. And if we start adding a bunch of water and fluid into the bloodstream, water essentially, that's going to put more and more pressure on the blood vessel walls, right? If you add more fluid to a pipe, you're going to increase, you're going to increase the blood vessel walls. So think about it like this. These are my blood vessels. If I happen to add more fluid to this pipe, I'm actually going to put more pressure on this wall. And if I put more pressure on this wall, I'm going to increase my blood pressure. I don't want you to get confused with vasodilation, because vasodilation decreases blood pressure. That's when the action is actually performed by the wall. What we're doing here is we're adding fluid into this blood vessel wall, this capillary bed, and eventually it's going to go into the veins. And it's actually going to stretch out the walls more, right? So we're causing the walls to actually get larger. We're not purposely moving the walls ourselves. Does that make sense? So that's going to increase your blood pressure. If you're confused about why, with what I just said, I can definitely set up another video to clarify what I just said.